the sports betting network.
This is the VSiN Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, happy Monday, and welcome into the VSiN Morning Line. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Sanford, recapping all the action from NFL Week 7, college football Week 8, and a bunch of playoff games. Wow, there was a lot of sports to watch over the weekend, guys. I'm sure we all had the quad boxes going on our TV screens, but here's what is coming up on the show before we get into all of that. Rich Gannon coming up at 8:30 Eastern to talk with Michael Lombardi, as he always does on Mondays. We're going to recap all these Week 7 games. How good are the Chiefs really? We're looking at the only remaining undefeated team, and we're also taking a look at some of these 2-loss teams. Are some a little bit more lucky or unlucky than they should be? Discussing the injuries to Deshaun Watson and Jaden Daniels, and looking at these MLB and WNBA playoff games. But before we get into all that, guys, I just want to hear about your weekends because it was a fun one. Michael, how was yours?
It was a weekend of sports. I mean, that was the best thing about it. I mean, from the kickoff of the Indiana-Nebraska game, which I thought was going to be a good game, until the closing of the Texas-Georgia game. I mean, Saturday was completely filled with great football and baseball. And then yesterday, starting at 9:30, watching those pathetic Patriots over there. Of course, all the excuses fall on Coach Belichick, but the reality of it is it was hard to do anything. It was hard to get anything done other than just watch great sports on TV. It closed last night with Russell Wilson's return. So, Harrison, I really didn't move much off the couch. I got to tell you, my whoop meter did nothing at all. I can say that.
Yeah, it was super hard to get in those 10,000 steps that I like to get daily, because you're right, Michael. Sports were on my TV all weekend long. Even Saturday night, watching the Yankees clinch their ticket to go to the World Series. What a beautiful thing. You guys are lucky you got me in here today, because the Liberty won last night. First basketball championship in the state of New York since the 1970s. If I was in the building, I don't know if I would have been able to make it in here today, but I was on my couch watching the game, because I was also watching the Jets kill my money line bet last night. You still had the bets playing last night. It's a spectacular time, that is for sure. And it's funny, Grace, I've mentioned this before, so I'm going to continue to dive a little bit further in. I'm looking at the Yankees playoff schedule. I'm looking at the fact that the NBA starts this week, and I might be single until 2025, yo. Might be single till 2025, because I can't fit any dates in this schedule, man. I'm looking at it. It's tough out here.
Oh yeah, that's what you sign up for when you get into this industry. Football season is just nope. Sorry, I can't talk to you. Can't reply to any texts or calls. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, you have to invest in these portable walking pads. Michael, you have the Whoop. I use the Aura Ring, and I mean, it is embarrassing how often it has to remind me to get up off the couch on these sports weekends. Yeah. But I'm telling you, when you have the walking pad, just prop it up in front of your TV, just walk during the whole game. You don't even notice. Easy way to get to your 10,000 steps. But man, it was a really fun time, and I had been traveling the last 3 weekends, so didn't actually get to sit down and really enjoy some of these games. So I mean, even though some of them weren't too great for my bankroll, it was still. It was a really enjoyable weekend. But let's get into some of these games, starting with Sunday Night Football between the Jets and Steelers. Russell Wilson, in his return to the field, throws for 2 touchdowns as the Steelers go on to rout the Jets 37-15. So Pittsburgh cashes as a 2.5-point dog. The over 40.5 also hits. Michael, what were your biggest takeaways from this game?
Well, I mean, obviously the number one takeaway is the Jets haven't really improved at all. I mean, all this fanfare. I mean, they were making it look like Davante Adams was coming in and he was going to save the franchise if you just listen to the broadcast. And, Davante did exactly what Davante's been doing for the last 2 years. He's averaging 12 yards a catch. He didn't make any explosive plays. But I think the story here is Pittsburgh's ability to move the football effectively against a Jet defense that was missing players, no question, but they just tossed them around. They throw for 260 yards. They get 409 yards, the most they've had all year, and score 37 points. Look, to me, I think that is really the key, is this Steeler team has all of a sudden found a way to score in the 30s 2 weeks in a row with two different quarterbacks. Everybody's going to say, well, Russell really played well. I thought Russell's arm was very disappointing. I thought some of those throws were fortunate, and he made them, and the receivers came to life for him, which was wonderful. But to me, it's the Steeler defense forced 2 turnovers. I mean, think about this. They have forced 8 turnovers in the last 3 games and have only given the ball away once. That's Steeler football.
Well, one of those turnovers, I can't give the Steelers too much credit for. Yes, they ended up with the interception. But, man, oh, man, that ball hit Garrett Wilson straight up on the chest, straight up at the numbers. It smacked him right there, and he just couldn't handle the ball. That ended up being an interception. The guy who intercepted it ended up taking it inside the 5-yard line, and the Steelers ended up scoring a touchdown. I thought that was a brutal blow to what the Jets were trying to accomplish on that drive in the game in particular. It really was a blow to my bankroll because I had the money line going into the game. So RIP to that bet. But as I even look at this Jets team now, Michael, 2-5, and I'm saying to myself, okay, the offense can get better. They missed Michael Carter and DJ Reed in the secondary last night, so the defense can get better in some ways. But even if they do, Michael, even if the Jets get better, at 2-5, the margin for the margin of imperfection is so small for this Jets team to make the playoffs now that it almost seems improbable that they can get there.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, now they get a break. They play New England next week. They host Houston at home, Arizona on the road, and Indianapolis before they get to the bye week. But the issue with the Jets are real simple. They can't block. I mean, Rodgers, again, is under pressure. And, again, we're not ever having this discussion because we always think Rodgers is playing at the 22 level or the 21 level, not the 22 level. This is the level he's been playing. He averages 6.5 yards per attempt. They really have struggled to throw the ball down the field. His interception at the end of the first half to Beanie Bishop was really a bad decision. He's got the angle route wide open if he just take the profits, but he forces the ball down the field, and it gives the Steelers momentum going into halftime. So they don't score in the entire second half. I mean, they get routed. So to me, this is the problems with them isn't just, okay, Tyron Smith isn't any good. We get that. They lose their right guard, Tucker. They have all issues trying to block him, getting any movement. They get another field goal block. Zerline's been a disaster all year for them. They make no attempt to change it. So this is kind of who they've become. And I think we just keep thinking that Rodgers is the 21 version, the MVP version, but he's not. He's 6.5 yards per attempt. Is exactly where he was last year in Green Bay. He just doesn't make. He's 41 years old. It's just not there. And I think that's got to be the realization of this whole thing. When you're 2-5, you've played 7 games, and you really can't put any points on the board. Think about this. Last year with no quarterback, they scored 124 points in 7 games. In 7 games. This year they've scored 128.
The first offensive play of the game for the Jets was a drop by Davante Adams. And I feel like that kind of set the tone for the entire game. It was the fewest passing yards for Aaron Rodgers in a game when he was targeting Davante Adams since 2017. Adams ends up going 3 for 30 on 9 targets. I do think one bright spot, even though the run game maybe was not where it should have been, Breece Hall did break out in the passing game, 6 catches for 103 yards on 9 targets. But I mean, there's a lot of reasons we can, lose faith in these Jets. There's a lot of ways we can bash them. But Michael, is there any glimmer of hope when you look at this team? Because some of these losses have been quite unlucky. You can't say they deserve to win last night, but maybe in their previous 2 or 3 games, they deserve to win those. So anything they can build on here.
Well, I mean, they're going to have to just try to get their execution at a much higher level. Look, their 2 wins this season have come against Tennessee and New England. I mean, those are 2 teams that have 1 win each. So it isn't like they haven't beaten a good team yet. And now they get New England again up in New England, who was a disaster in London. I mean, having a 10-0 lead against the Jaguars and just melting. And then Gerard Mayo is saying his team's soft. Well, isn't that on you, Coach Mayo? I mean, at some point, when are you going to have accountability for what you're doing every single day? So I don't know. To me, the Jets have a real issue in their offensive line. They have no real ability to work the ball down the field. And I think they're kidding themselves with their defense. Their defense last night, I mean, the last 2 weeks, they've given up 149 yards rushing. Buffalo ran for 149 and Pittsburgh ran for 149. And their defense struggles to turn the ball over. They haven't had a turnover in 2 games since Albrecht became head coach. They haven't forced a turnover, which is what they need to do. And they've given the ball away 3 times in those 2 games. So, look, when you look at the wins, they forced 3 turnovers and didn't turn it over. Every other game, they've turned it over, and that falls on the offense and their inability to close the gaps.
The Jets and Aaron Rodgers said after the game last night that they need to get their running game a bit better so that they can do more play-action passing. Aaron Rodgers also told the media in terms of what they can do to make sure they get over this hump is stop listening to the media. But Grace, I'll tell you, in New York, it's the worst place to try and block out the noise from the media, particularly when you are a team that is coming in with Super Bowl aspirations. It's only going to get louder, win or loss, as the season becomes more crucial for this team. I'm gonna be worried about this younger Jets team, the younger Jets players, and even Aaron Rodgers himself, if he can handle some of the scrutiny that's coming his way, because this is the last year of that 2-year deal, and as of right now, it's going to look like a complete failure.
Yeah, tell them don't listen to the media. Also do not check the odds boards, because in some places the Jets now have matching odds with the Dolphins to win the division at 11-1. The Bills now a -750 favorite to win the AFC East. Coming up next, we are continuing to break down these NFL Week 7 games. The Chiefs upset the 49ers. We're getting into that one and more.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Coming up Monday on Follow the Money, we recap a wild weekend in football. On Monday Night Football doubleheader, well, we know who's meeting in the World Series. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, and thank you for getting your day started with us. The World Series is set, and a WNBA champion has been crowned. Over the weekend, in case you missed it, the Yankees go on to beat the Guardians, heading to their first World Series appearance since 2009. And last night, the Dodgers finish off the Mets with a 10-5 win in the NLCS, their 25th CS pennant. They advance to the World Series, so it is a matchup between two of the top 5 largest payrolls in the majors. Ohtani homered. Tommy Edman had a massive series and massive game for Ribbies last night. The opening odds for this one, the LA Dodgers are the -125 favorite to win the World Series. The Yankees are +105 on the money line. We'll be getting into this series much more as the week goes on. But looking at the WNBA, the Liberty win their first ever title. One of the original members of this league finally getting the chip, 65-62 in a game that went to overtime. It was a game 5 too. I mean, it was just a thrilling series all the way around. Harrison, I was on the edge of my seat last night. I was so happy we got overtime. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, that game reminded me of that Game 7 NBA Finals matchup between the Lakers and the Celtics back in 2009, I believe it was, where it was just gritty. Nobody could make a shot, super physical, and some way, somehow, somebody was going to win. The Liberty ended up winning that game. They shot 5 of Sabrina Ionescu and Breanna Stewart, their 2 marquee players outside of Jonquel Jones. They shot a combined 5 of 34. 5 of 34 from the field, and we're still able to get the W. It was a gritty game. Shout out to the Liberty, and shout out to the Minnesota Lynx, too, because they easily could have won that game. I think the only disappointing thing for me, and I'm a Liberty fan, the only disappointing thing for me was the conversation and dialogue that came out after the game, whether it was the Minnesota Lynx head coach or whether it was even like high-profile players like LeBron James and Damian Lillard talking about the referees and not letting the players decide it. There was definitely a lot of foul calls that were questionable, but there's nothing you could do about it at this point other than move on. It's just harder to move on when it helps decide a WNBA championship. Thought the referees could have been a lot better last night, and I think it's just disappointing when you get to this stage in the WNBA Finals when women's basketball is really capturing a lot of attention for it to be kind of marred by how bad the officiating was last night. And again, I'm a Liberty fan. I'm happy they won. I will be at the parade whenever it is this week, but I can still admit that the referees could have been a lot better, particularly for such a marquee game in a marquee season for the league.
Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeves said after the game that the championship was stolen from them because of that call in the final seconds on Alana Smith. It was. And then I don't know if you saw the soundbite. One of the reporters repeated that to the Liberty once they went up to the podium and they all burst out laughing. Because, I mean, I think you can have an opinion on officiating, but it did go to 5 games. And the calls, like, that's not what. You can say that last call at the end gave them a chance, but it gave them a chance to go to overtime. But ultimately, that's not why you win or lose the game.
Yeah, no, I think it's not a good look for any coach to say that. And I would love for Michael to chime in here too. Yes, you do want to voice your opinion about officiating when it's that bad. But Michael, you could think about it to teams that you were affiliated with that won a Super Bowl or lost big time games. I just think it's unbecoming behavior when the season is over. There's nothing you could do about it. And then you still complain about the officiating. I can get it if it's game 3 of a series and you're trying to kind of maybe get the referee's attention for the upcoming game. But when it's the final game and there's nothing else left after it, it's just not, it's unbecoming behavior, Michael, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the game, as Grace said, that all evens out. There's never just one play while you win or one play while you lose. And, the game comes down to a series of plays, a series of games, especially in a 5-game series. So, when you play 5 games against an opponent, usually the better team wins. It has nothing to do with the officials. So, to me, complaining about it really offers all it does is give the players an excuse to not see what the reality is, which we have to get better and play better in these close game situations.
Yeah, it just gives a little sore loser vibes. But I thought the fact that, I mean, the way this series ended, the way the game ended going to overtime was kind of just symbolic of this season as a whole, kind of a transcendent season that had the highest ratings of all time, the highest betting handle and tickets of all time. Of course, everyone was tuning in for Caitlin Clark, but so many players and personalities that make it easy to root for. So a fantastic end to a fantastic WNBA season. And Harrison, I'll be looking forward to seeing those videos from the parade.
Yes, indeed. I got you.
All right, let's get back into the NFL action. Chiefs and 49ers gave us a rematch of the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs go on to win this one 28-18, now 5-0 against Kyle Shanahan's 49ers. And I want to hear from the head coach first before we get into this game breakdown, because he wasn't feeling too hot after that one.
There's no way to sugarcoat that. We got our ass kicked today. Lots of reasons for it, but those are things that they don't need to sit and think about today. We'll address all those tomorrow. We'll get together. We'll go through the truth of the whole tape and be hard on each other and find a way to put it to bed so we can come out here and make sure we put our best foot forward and find a way to get a win versus Dallas.
Well, that was the truth. I mean, look, if I would have told you before the game that Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for 154 yards, throw 2 interceptions, you would have said, well, there's a good chance the 49ers can win. But there was really no chance. This defense of Kansas City has taken himself to another level. Even losing Snead to Tennessee hasn't really affected him one bit. This is a defensive team all the way, and they were able to run the ball 39 times in the game, gained 4.7 yards per carry in that. Mahomes had a huge run, 33 yards, which was sensational. But this Niner team is just depleted with injuries. There's no way to sugarcoat that. I mean, they have no receivers on the field. Brandon Ayuk now has an ACL. He'll be gone. I really don't know. I didn't know what happened to Deebo Samuel, but he wasn't playing. I know he had an injury. I wasn't sure what it was. But you could see it out there. Pearsall, Cowling, these young players really weren't ready to play. And I thought Purdy played his worst game as a professional football player last night, yesterday afternoon. He was not sharp. And there was nothing going well for the 49ers. And their defense, Kansas City's, had a lot to do with that. So, look, the Niners are not the same team we thought they were. I think they're a fake good team because defensively they're not as good. That defensive front can't dominate like it needs to. And their offense is really not the same. They don't have their best player, McCaffrey. They don't have their best receiver, Ayuk. They don't have their second best receiver, Samuel. This is a team that is really a skeleton of itself, and it's not going to get better moving forward.
There were a number of bettors and fantasy football players yesterday that were upset, and I don't blame them, on how things kind of transpired if you were backing the 49ers. You can't script, obviously, the Brandon Ayuk injury, so that just happened. But I think there was a lot of frustration with bettors, fantasy football players, with Deebo Samuel, because it was all signs were that he was healthy and good to go. But, man, I don't think he lasted more than a quarter out there. And I don't know, to your point, Michael, I don't know if there's full clarity on what exactly was going on with him. Yeah. But he wasn't out there at all, and he had no impact on the game. And he's not just a receiver for this team. He's also a person that could operate as a running back as well. So the frustration level with a lot of football, with a lot of people who are investing in those markets or prop markets, game markets, fantasy football, super frustrated with what happened there in the injury reporting from the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, I think they fully expected him to go, and I think whether he re-injured it or whether he felt something, I don't know the answer to that. But look, that's the price you pay. I mean, when you take a guy who's got durability issues, he's always had them. He's a hard physical runner. He's not been the same running back for them this year. He's been rather disappointing, really, when you watch him. This whole 49er team has really the look of a team that lost a Super Bowl. Let's just be honest. They look slow. They look tired. For a team that was so good offensively last year, they are really slow on offense this year. They can't make an explosive plays. Their best receiver really is Jennings, and he was hurt before the game. So, look, I don't understand how any fantasy person could get upset, because that's the price you pay when you enter the NFL. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys don't come back.
I think it's going to be an interesting experiment here if you see these injuries to Deebo Samuel really prevail throughout the entirety of the year. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is injured. We know Brock Purdy is up for a new contract, and We all know in the NFL, once that quarterback gets off that rookie scale, things have to change, and the responsibilities for that quarterback really heightened. I think now all eyes are going to be on Brock Purdy going forward here. Can he elevate the play of the players around him, or was it the players elevating him? It's a question a lot of people were asking, and I think we're going to get that answer a lot sooner than maybe even people predicted, considering a lot of the injuries that we're seeing for this 49ers team, Grace.
Indeed. Now the Chiefs, the only remaining undefeated team this season at 6-0. The other undefeated team heading into this weekend, the Vikings, handed their first loss by a division rival Lions. We will get into that game and much more on the other side of this break. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we continue to recap these NFL Week 7 games. We all know at this point the NFC North is the best division in the NFL. It was only a matter of time before these teams started cannibalizing each other, and the Lions are the first team to hand the Vikings their first loss of the season, winning 31-29 on a walk-off field goal. So Detroit covers as a 1.5-point dog. This goes over the total of 50.5. Really exciting one until the end here. Michael, what were your thoughts?
You know, I wasn't anticipating Aaron Jones playing. I mishandicapped that. But to me, it was a great game. It was a back-and-forth game. Detroit had the big lead, and then David Montgomery had the fumble, which got them back into Minnesota, back into the game. But this was really about the Minnesota inability to slow down Jared Goff, who's been sensational the last 3 weeks. He only throws 3 incomplete passes. He was able to handle the pressure, got sacked 4 times in the game, but it was able to handle the pressure. And this offense, when it needed to make plays, they were really effective, and they gave Minnesota a lot of trouble. I mean, they ran the ball for 144 yards, something that typically doesn't happen against a Minnesota defense. And they were able to throw for 280 yards, and Jared Goff was almost perfect with his ball placement. It was really a good game. I think this is going to be, this could be the NFC Championship game eventually when we play it. But both these teams are really good. I thought both were well coached. Sam Darnold was as good as he can play. Again, throws for 260 yards. Makes a great throw down the field, but they had a hard time getting the ball into the end zone when they needed to, and I think that ultimately was the difference. Credit Detroit. I mean, this Detroit team is really, really a tough-minded team that's able to kind of overcome some obstacles. They put themselves in a horrendous position. I thought the fake punt in the first quarter was not a real smart move, which forced them to go down 10-0, but they rallied back to have the lead. So Detroit's a hard team to play, and they're really a hard team to beat.
I loved watching this game. I wish it was in the primetime window so I could have kept my sole focus on it. 2 great teams going head-to-head. It was definitely what, Michael, as you said, could have been a preview of what could happen in the NFC Championship game, even though a team like the Packers might have something to say about that. I will just point out another betting trend for the people out there who are listening or watching. I remember earlier in the week, last week, I pointed out how good Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings are in that first quarter. They won that first quarter yet again. They lead the NFL going into the game, 9.9 points in the first quarter. They won the first quarter yesterday 10-0. It was available at plus money, so that bet cashed. It's something that I think bettors should be keeping track of going forward. That first 15 scripted, definitely something of a plus for the Minnesota Vikings, even though, to your point, Michael, they did get some help because that Dan Campbell decision to go for it on 4th down inside his own 40 in the first quarter on the road seems so foolish to me. And actually, it made me hearken back to the NFC Championship game where he made that questionable decision as well. As good as his team might be, Michael, the Detroit Lions, there has to be some type of fear factor here that in a big-time game, Dan Campbell might roll the dice unnecessarily and potentially cost them a game.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the concern, right? I think you have to take that into account. He did it in the first quarter. Look, to me, this is, if you want to go for it, put the ball in Jared Goff's hands, not your punter. Because I think the one thing we all know when you're playing the Detroit Lions, you better be prepared for a fake punt. They've done it so many times that you spend all week on preparing your teams for that. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important that you handle that. So he's better off going for it on 4th down. I don't agree. I think what he was trying to do is play from in front because Minnesota has been playing from in front all year. And, he was looking to try to get that lead early in the game, and unfortunately it backfired.
I want to talk about Jared Goff a little bit because remember earlier in the season, we kind of felt like something was off with him. No one could really pinpoint it, but something wasn't right. Well, yesterday he almost had a perfect game. Heading into the third quarter, he was 19 for 19. The Vikings actually blitzed him at a season-high rate from Brian Flores, over 55% of his dropbacks. But against the blitz, he went 13 of 15 for 163 yards and a touchdown. He now has a completion rate of over 83% in the last 4 games, the highest by an NFL quarterback in that span. So, Michael, what were your thoughts on Goff, not just yesterday, but on this little streak he's having right now?
Well, I think, when you really break it down, right, they have, after the 53 or 55 pass attempt game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've done a better job of saying, okay, this is who we are. Even though David Montgomery struggled to run the football yesterday, and that was a real issue, Gibbs came in and gave them that juice that they needed to run the ball against Minnesota. And this is a game where they haven't really tried to overthrow it. I mean, Goff throws 25 times in a game. 25 times he completes 22. So basically their execution, they have 49 rushes and completions, which is good. It's not really elite, but it's good. And I think the fact that he throws the ball with accuracy, to me, if I'm a Lions fan, I'm excited with the fact he got sacked 4 times, but yet it didn't affect his game. And typically sometimes that happens. When you start to move him around in the pocket, he becomes less effective as a player. But not lately. He's been really good. And look, St. Brown made great catches in traffic. They were able to get the right play called at the right time. This team has got great chemistry. But here's what I will say about the Lions. They need a pass rusher because they had the lead and Minnesota was able to get back because Detroit could not put any pressure on Sam Darnold at all. They really struggled to do that. Now, he was sacked 4 times in the game, but late in the fourth quarter, late when they made their comeback, he was really standing in the pocket and had time to make throws. So they're going to need to make a trade here. They're going to need to add, whether it's a Josh Uche, whether it's a Zadarius Smith from the Browns, they're going to have to add somebody to really get their team to another level.
That was where I was going to take it with you there, Michael, because I was encouraged by what I saw from Jared Goff. But then I still found myself concerned with this Detroit Lions team because their weakness has always been in the secondary. And now they were kind of set up to have that pass rush really help them with Aiden Hutchinson. But if you have no pass rusher and the secondary is probably the weakest part of this team, it feels like any team could potentially launch a comeback against them. And maybe going forward, even if they get up big in games as a live bettor, I might try and target any team that might be getting a certain amount of points against them. But in general, though, Jared Goff, I think, was spectacular. And it really makes you think, is there a reasonable bet on Jared Goff to be the MVP, considering how many points this team is putting up, considering how accurate he is, being coordinated by Ben Johnson. And then you also add in the fact as well that 5-1, there's no reason to believe that this team might finish the season with less than 3 losses, less than 4 losses. And when you have that quality of a record, you're the quarterback, you're that accurate, it would feel as if he's definitely somebody we can entertain for being the MVP, because even a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, which has an unblemished record, I don't know if we could say Patrick Mahomes is the MVP because it's not the offense that's truly winning them games.
Well, Patrick Mahomes isn't the MVP. In fact, if they try to give it to him, I don't think he would take it. He knows he's not playing well. I mean, his defense is carrying the team. I mean, to me, that's even if somebody votes for him to be the MVP. Now, he could be the best player in the league when he wants to. But right now, with Justin Watson getting hurt, with their receiver situation, I mean, look, nobody said it yesterday on the broadcast, but Kelsey's disappeared. Their best tight end is Noah Gray. So forget about Mahomes for the MVP. That's a defensive team that needs to run the football. Credit Andy Reid for changing what he's doing, changing his style. He gets it. He understands it. But I agree with you on Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff should be in consideration to be the MVP. He's played at such a level. He went 18 for 18. I think he was 23 for 25, and then he was 25 for 28 the other day. I mean, he's thrown very few incomplete passes, and they're not checkdowns. He's not going through the Derek Carr program where he's throwing checkdowns. The ball's going down the field, and he's making really good throws. Hell, he had a damn touchdown. One of his only incompletions of the game, he had a touchdown. He just didn't put enough air into the ball to let the receiver run under it late in the game in the Minnesota game. But look, this Detroit team, because of the line, because of their running back situation, is really good. They're just going to need a rusher to really seal the deal. They have an offense that can really get the lead and take the game over, and they've got great team chemistry.
Are you surprised, Michael, that the Detroit Lions didn't get into that Hassan Reddick market? We saw the news this past weekend where Hassan Reddick had come to an agreement with the Jets.
They were in it.
Are you surprised they didn't move in there?
I'm sure they're in it. I mean, I'm sure they're in every market for a rusher, but I'm sure the price was probably – look, the Jets have a third-round pick invested in it, right? So I don't know if they want to go and turn around and give a third-round pick in 26 and then have to deal with the contract. I think Woody Johnson clearly wanted to prove that Robert Saleh was the problem, so now he brought in Hassan Riddick. Look, I'm not saying Saleh wasn't the problem. I think there were a lot of things they could have done better. But this move that Woody Johnson made, remember, Woody says thinking is overrated. This move that Woody made hasn't looked very good.
All right. Well, Lions do have a good quarterback situation. Browns do not, especially after Deshaun Watson goes down with injury. We're going to break down their situation, plus the Commanders and Raiders also dealing with some injured quarterbacks. Getting into those games next on the VSiN Morning Line.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater, built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
Wake up with Michael Lombardi, Grace Remington, and Harrison Samford on the VSiN Morning Line.
I will say this. I told Brian Daboll the minute he went there, you got to get a quarterback. I don't know one thing that Jacksonville does well, and so I'm not going to make a bet with a team that doesn't do anything well.
They'll cover all the top scores and stories from the night before, keep you up to date on the news impacting betting lines, plus give you their picks for the upcoming action. The VSiN Morning Line, weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern, right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line. Let's get into more NFL games here. The Browns fall to the division rival Bengals 21-14, but a controversial moment in that game. Deshaun Watson goes down with an injury. It looked like an Achilles rupture on the video broadcast. Head coach later went on to confirm it is an Achilles injury, but they'll have to run more tests to see whether it is season-ending or not. But the controversial part came when fans started booing and cheering when Deshaun Watson was carted off the field. Well, his teammates took offense to that, mainly Jameis Winston. So let's take a listen to what Winston had to say to the fans.
I'm grateful that I had a chance to serve Deshaun, but I am very upset with the reaction to a man that has had the world against him for the past 4 years, and he put his body and life on the line for this city every single day, regardless of your perception, regardless of what you thought should happen with him. He committed every single day that I've been here to be the best that he can be for this team.
Look, I think the booing of Deshaun Watson is deplorable. But I also don't agree with Jameis Winston in saying that the last 4 years he's given everything he's had. We know he has settled multiple lawsuits off the field, and his behavior off the field as a result of those lawsuits was despicable. So that's in one category. But to boo a player who's injured on the field, to me, that's not right by the Cleveland Browns fans, and their dissatisfaction with Deshaun Watson really should be directed more towards Jimmy Haslam and the ownership than it should be towards Watson. They knew what they were getting into with Watson. They knew all about the lawsuits. They knew all about the settlements. They knew all about the suspension that was coming, and yet they rewarded this young man with $240 million. It's not his fault that somebody was willing to pay $240 million for a quarterback that really doesn't look anything like the quarterback that we saw 4 years ago before all these incidents took place. So on one hand, I do agree with Winston. It was wrong. But on the other hand, he's completely wrong in defending him the last 4 years.
This is a case where sometimes an athlete should really take a beat, couple of beats, 3 beats, and really think about what they're saying. Or at the very least, a wise man once said, it's wise to not say anything at all. And maybe in this instance, Jameis Winston could have taken that approach because he said certain things that are really going to take away from the core of what he was trying to convey. To say that he put his body and life on the line, excuse me, Deshaun Watson's getting paid $230 million guaranteed. There's a lot of people who would put their body on the line for that number figure. In fact, there's a lot of people who put their body on the line for a lot lesser of a dollar figure. So that was one of the things that, really stuck out to me. He said he also had the world against him. Jameis, why in the world does Deshaun Watson have the world against him? Because he has over 24 sexual misconduct cases against him. Let's be real here. Don't try and act as if this is for some invalid reason. It's a very valid reason why the world is against him. Come on now, Jameis, you know better than that. I understand the sentiment that Jameis had going into this whole circumstance, where he basically was saying, we don't want a man who has just torn his Achilles, is on a cart. We shouldn't be booing him. And I could agree with that. I don't think it was proper to boo him. That is definitely for sure. But at the same time, if you want to be a conveyor of such a message, if you want to motivate people to really show some humanity, you really have to think about the privilege that you have getting a microphone and really take a beat, Grace, and really think about what you're saying. Because now saying all of those things really ignores really what you're trying to convey as Jameis Winston. Because now people can't get over the fact that you're basically calling him a model citizen, that you're basically reviewing him as some type of martyr. Nah. There's a reason why people don't like Deshaun Watson, and it's totally valid. But it does not mean that you could root for his downfall. There's a difference between the two. I just wish Jameis Winston really took a couple of beats, and really thought about what he was going to say, because he did not say it correctly at all.
It's so embarrassing. It's so cringy for both Jameis Winston and Myles Garrett to say what they did, saying Deshaun put his body and life on the line. Excuse me, is he a first responder? Is he a nurse? Is he a teacher going through school shooting practices. I'm sorry, my sister is a teacher making $50,000 a year. They have to do that's putting your life on the line. This guy's making $50 million a year. Seriously? I get it. If you're a fan, you should not be rooting for someone's injury. That's pretty messed up. But the situation reminded me of a phrase. And the phrase goes, I hope you get the day you deserve. The world is against Deshaun Watson for a reason. And let's not forget, Jameis Winston has had some sketchy situations of his own. Myles Garrett isn't the highest character person either. So please, please, if you are a football fan, do not let the charm of these men sway you. This was handled so poorly. Could not have been said any worse by these two men. Where are the PR people? Really? So I like everything you said, Harrison. It's just embarrassing. I physically cringe listening to it. I don't want to listen to it again.
No, it was a bad job by them trying to take this charge or try to take that initiative on the microphone yesterday. I think it's somewhat also convoluting, and I don't envy any Cleveland Browns fan. And I couldn't imagine being in their circumstance, Grace and Michael. You imagine this is a team that you're rooting for, Michael, for the entirety of your lifetime. You're a big-time Cleveland Browns fan. You want them so bad to be successful, and then they bring in this quarterback who has all of these sexual misconduct cases against him, and it really puts you in a bind because you want to root for the brand. You want to root for the team. And then it's led by this guy who has a questionable character. And while, you want to try and look past it, but you can't. You want to try to have a spirit of forgiveness, but it's really hard when this is the allegations that are going against them and these are the charges that are being lauded against them. It's a difficult circumstance, and I think that's why a lot of people were even disgusted by some of the Cleveland Browns fans who were cheering when he came to the team. But I think it's so difficult to even be in that circumstance in the first place, Michael.
Well, I mean, look, you can blame Deshaun all you want, and certainly his behavior off the field is deplorable. And the lawsuits that he had to settle is reflective of that deplorable behavior. But the reality here is, why are you getting mad at him? If somebody were going to hand you a check for $230 million, you're going to take it. And, and to me, they caved in and catered their team around them. And now they're 1-6, and they're going to have to start dumping players because they're in cap hell. It was interesting, though, to me, as bad as he's played, I think really this is more important. I mean, we all have our views of the off the field, and certainly I am in strong support of how deplorable it was. But to me, what was the undertelling story here was how his teammates liked him and how they came to his defense when he was playing like crap. Like, my view of that locker room was to be disjointed. I thought Amari Cooper's actions and behaviors indicated that. But to me, listening to Winston and listening to Garrett, who come to his defense after he's played as poorly as he has and responsible for their 1-6 record as much as anybody, to me, I thought they would have had enough of that. But that locker room is all messed up. And it starts with the decision by Paul DePodesta, by Andrew Barry, and ultimately by Jimmy and Dee Haslam, the owners of the team, to bring this player in. And without understanding the repercussions of their move. And so then yesterday, they have Dorian Thompson-Robinson as the backup instead of having Jameis Winston as the number 2, where they could have easily gotten back into that game. And yet they played Thompson-Robinson, who's a disaster. I don't know why they keep playing him, but he has yet to prove he can play in the National Football League or complete just a regular pass. So the decision-making process, to me, in the Cleveland Browns organization is one that Cleveland Brown fans should be all upset about.
Speaking of decision-making, considering the torn Achilles, considering how Deshaun Watson has looked so far this year coming off of the shoulder injury, is it fair to assume Browns go into the draft looking for a quarterback now?
I think they have to, but they can't get away from the contract. The contract's guaranteed for skill and injury. So they couldn't have cut him anyway. He's got 2 more years of guaranteed money. So they're going to have to try to. Now, what I think they believe, I mean, they obviously think Dorian Thompson-Robinson's a good player, or else they wouldn't have given him all this money. I think the Browns have a lot of issues. They're trying to build this new stadium in Brook Park, which is in a suburb. It used to be where the Ford plant was. And to get that enthusiasm, to sell those tickets, look, Brown fans are tremendous. They're going to come support their team, come hell or high water. But they're not going to support this ownership group if they don't start making better decisions.
One thing I want to add quickly is Jameis Winston had to settle a sexual assault case of his own in 2016. Myles Garrett has anger management issues. So the fact that they are backing Deshaun Watson carries no weight. Their words mean nothing to me. But as you both mentioned, the Browns and the NFL did put us in this position as fans. It has been the elephant in the room all season. So maybe we are better off directing our anger at the NFL and the organization rather than Watson himself. All right. Coming up next, we're getting back into these NFL recaps. Jaden Daniels, Aiden O'Connell, both injured. What does that mean for their respective teams?
It's that magical time of year, the sports equinox, when all 4 major sports are in action. VSiN is celebrating